Most pianists think the problem is that they're not practicing enough. So they practice more, but they're still stuck. They're not progressing. Random mistakes keep popping up, and they walk away from the keys frustrated. The problem was never the hours, it was what was happening inside the hours. If your progress is slower than you'd like for the work you're putting in, or if practicing feels like a grind, keep watching. In this video, I will show you 5 specific habits that actually waste your practice time. And one of them isn't just wasting time, it's actively hardwiring mistakes into your muscle memory and moving you backwards. Point 1. Practicing sections that are too long creates the illusion of mastery without permanent learning. You know that feeling when you've been working on a passage for an hour, and by the end, it's really coming along. It feels solid, it feels reliable, you feel a sense of accomplishment, you feel like you actually got it. And then you come back the next day and it's mostly gone. A piano teacher I knew had this fabric art made, and when she retired, she gave it to me, and I turned it into a pillow because honestly, it belongs in every piano studio. I played it better at home. I hear it all the time. And the thing is, the students aren't wrong. They did play it better at home, but what they're remembering is how it felt after an hour of reviewing it, not how it felt when they sat down cold and tried to play what's in their long-term memory. This happens because of something called the illusion of mastery. Think of your working memory like a juggler. A good juggler can keep 5, maybe 7 balls in the air at a time. But the moment you throw in an 8th or 9th ball, the rhythm breaks and everything hits the floor. Your brain works exactly the same way. It can only hold about 5 to 7 items actively in mind at once. And the moment your chunk is longer than that, the older items start dropping out before they ever make it into long-term memory. The extra repetitions feel productive. They feel satisfying, but they're not building anything permanent. They're just keeping the juggler busy with too many balls. So here's what I want you to do. Pick a small chunk, 1 beat, 2 beats, maybe a measure if it's not too many notes, small enough that you can play it perfectly. Pick a tempo where you know you won't make any mistakes. If necessary, stop if you feel like you're about to make a mistake. Play it carefully 3 times. And then take a 10-second break. Then play it 3 more times. Make sure you use the same fingering and the same movements every time to the best of your ability. You may not get it every single time, but do the absolute best that you can. And here's a really important detail. Play a little bit at the end of your chunk each time so you're always practicing across the bar line or into whatever the next section is that you need to play. That makes it much easier to put everything together when you get to that phase. 2 quick diagnostics. If you're making mistakes, it's almost always one of 2 things. The chunk is too long or the tempo is too fast. Make it smaller, slow down. If you're bored, that's a message from your brain telling you, hey, I got this. It's time to move on. You can always come back later. This method is for learning new notes and fingerings only. Getting the whole thing assembled and flowing is a later stage. Now, the chunk size is just one piece of this, because even if your chunks are perfect, there's another habit that could be actively hardwiring in mistakes. 2, practicing mistakes. Here's something that makes this habit different from all the other ones. The rest of them waste your time. This one actually moves you backwards. I had a friend who loved to play piano, but he didn't have a lot of time to practice. So he would sit down at the end of the workday and play through his pieces for fun. That meant a little too fast, plenty of wrong notes, but lots of drama. He said something that has always stayed with me. Eventually, I always ruin them. Then I have to get new pieces. And what had happened is that he never actually learned a correct version. Every run-through had a different collection of mistakes, which meant his brain never got a consistent version of anything to hold on to, just an ever-growing menu of ways to get it wrong. A really important thing to know about mistakes is that every time you repeat a mistake, you're essentially voting for that mistake to become permanent. And here's an important ratio you need to know. It takes 5 to 8 correct repetitions to undo a single wrong one. So if you're running through a passage and 8 out of 10 reps have a mistake in them, you are never going to get out of the hole. The math simply doesn't work in your favor. Takeaway, do whatever it takes to not practice mistakes. Slow down. Stop before the hard moment and think about what you need to do before you do it. Play out a tempo. Tap the rhythm before you try to play the notes. One-handed if you absolutely have to. Here's a useful way to think about your practice tempo. I call it the $100 tempo. If someone gave you $100 every time you played your chunk without a mistake, how slow would you go? That is your practice tempo. And usually there's one specific thought that will make a passage reliable. Experiment until you find it, and then practice thinking that every single time. Now, you could be doing all this correctly, the right chunk size, right tempo, no mistakes, and you're still not improving as fast as you'd like. And that's usually because of what's happening, or actually not happening, inside your head when you're practicing. This is probably the most invisible or inaudible problem on this list. It feels like practicing. You're sitting at the piano, your fingers are moving, but if you're not actively engaged with what you're doing, tracking the fingering, the harmony, the structure and patterns, the repetitions won't be registering the way you think they are. And here's the consequence. If you practice letting your mind wander, when you go to play for somebody, guess what? Your mind is going to wander because you practiced it. Think about trying to memorize a poem in a language that you don't speak. If someone handed you a poem in Chinese to memorize, you could repeat it 100 times and it would probably still feel like meaningless sounds. Without meaning, it's much harder for your brain to remember things. Music works the same way. Meaning can be anything that makes sense to you. A theoretical analysis, what chord it is, a color, a story, a picture. Noticing that this passage is like something that happened earlier but changed. Whatever gives your brain something to grab onto. Your brain should be tired when you finish practicing, not your fingers. Plan a fingering for every note before you drill it. Find the meaning in what you're learning. And if you catch your mind wandering, stop, reset, because the number of repetitions is not what builds the skill. The quality of attention inside each repetition is what does it. Now, attention and chunk size and mistake-free practice are all things you can control in the moment. But there's a whole nother layer of how the brain learns that most pianists completely ignore. And it happens while you're not even at the piano. Point 4, learn faster by practicing less. So everything that we talked about so far happens at the piano. The chunk size, no mistakes, paying attention. But there's a whole different layer of learning that happens when you're not practicing at all. And most pianists either don't know about this or they feel guilty taking advantage of it. You probably know that if you're trying to build muscle, it doesn't happen while you're working out. It happens while you're resting. The workout is just the stimulus for your muscle to grow. Your brain works exactly the same way. MRI studies have shown that the brain actively rehearses in rest what it just learned, going through it over and over at a very high speed. And that's when the learning is getting consolidated into long-term memory. So breaks are not wasted time. Breaks are when your brain is doing some of its most important work. Now, this next idea can genuinely change about how you plan your practicing schedule. There's a principle called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. Catchy name, huh? And what it shows is that letting your brain forget something to a certain degree and then relearning it at just the right moment really is what accelerates your progress, which means that taking a day off of practicing might genuinely help you improve. I know that feels wrong. A student of mine told me about someone who got the highest score in the country on a medical board exam using exactly this principle with flashcards, spacing out the reviewing so the brain had to work hard to retrieve it each time but hadn't forgotten completely. Same principle, different instrument. So what does this look like when you're actually practicing? We already talked about the short breaks between the repetitions. Definitely every 30 minutes. That's when you can squeeze in some fun activities. In my group, we had people balancing on one foot, doing squats. One woman was coloring in a picture of daffodils. Whatever gets you away from the piano for a few minutes without being horribly distracting. You can switch up which piece or section you're working on often during a session also. Your brain will consolidate one thing while you're working on another, and you end up learning both faster. And doing something genuinely different counts almost as much as taking a complete break. There are many different ways to harness the power of breaks, and I teach all of them inside the 28-day piano journey, which is linked in the description below if you want to go deeper into it. Now, all of this, the chunks, the mistakes, paying attention, breaks, these are very important foundations. But there's one more habit that really ties everything together, and it's also the one that makes practicing actually fun. Point 5, build mastery with variety. So we've covered the habits that waste time, the ones that actively set you back. This last one is a little bit different. A lot of people feel like if practicing isn't a grind, they're not trying hard enough. Like progress and having fun are opposites, and you can't have both. So they sit down and do the same thing over and over and over because they think that's what's required. But boredom at the piano is actually a signal, and we talked about this in the beginning. Often it's your brain saying, hey, I've got this, let's do something different. Think about the story of the blind man and the elephant. Each one is touching a different part and comes away with a completely different idea of what the animal is. If you only ever practice your piece the exact same way every time, you're only touching one part of that elephant. Variable practice is how you explore all of it. The contrast, the structure, the meaning, the organization, all the different dimensions of what you're learning. Every variation reveals something new about the music that repeat the same way every time never would. The list of ways to vary your practice is genuinely long. Do it in rhythms. Sing it. Switch the hands. Play it on the floorboard. Start from the end. Work backwards. Play it in a different key, different octave. Play it faster than your goal tempo or slower than you think would be useful. Many more ideas. Each one of these approaches asks your brain a slightly different question about the same material. And that is what builds deep understanding rather than just surface familiarity. If it feels interesting, even if fun, that's not a sign that you're slacking. That is a sign that your brain is engaged and actually learning. I put together a full list of variable practice techniques, and I'm giving it away as a free download. Link is in the description. Nobody ever taught you this stuff because most practicing advice ignores how the brain actually learns. But now you know. And small changes to how you practice will make a very big difference in how fast you practice. If you want to see how all of this fits into a complete day-by-day framework, including the spaced repetition, variable practicing, and exactly when to use each tool that we talked about today, watch this next. It goes much deeper, covers a lot more ideas that we didn't touch on here, and it will change how you think about learning repertoire permanently. And if you're ready to do this with support, feedback, and a community of pianists who are serious about learning, changing how they practice, check out my 28-day piano journey. You can try it for free for 7 days. The link is below.